Gaga Grumps says welcome gremlins to the game grotto. Take a seat, grab your daily heart, claim your points and prepare to play.
Now tap that screen, tap it, tap that screen, yeah, tap it. Game gremlins coming, let's go. Now tap that screen, tap it, tap that screen, yeah, tap it. Let's see those team stickers flow.
Gaga Grumps says something
Game
happened.
gremlins on the scene. Now tap that screen.
Gaga Grumps says thanks for doing your daily heart summon.
Now tap that screen.
Summer says, Gaga and Grumps, hello.
Now tap that screen. Gang gremlins on the scene. Welcome gremlins to the game grotto. Welcome gremlins to the game grotto. Welcome in, guys. Settle down. Grab your heartbeat. Share us round. Now tap that screen. Tap it, tap that screen. Yeah, tap it. It's your warm-up routine. Gang gremlins on the scene.
Gaga Grumps says welcome gremlins to the game grotto. Take a seat, grab your daily heart, claim your points and prepare to play.
Gang gremlins on the scene. Gang gremlins on the scene.
Gaga Grumps says treasure box up if you need a coin for your daily heart.
Now tap that screen. Tap it, tap that screen. Yeah, tap it. Gang gremlins coming, let's go. Now tap that screen. Tap it, tap that screen. Yeah, tap it. Let's see those team stickers flow. Gang gremlins on the scene. Now tap that screen.
Gaga Grumps says hey there XC, nice to see you again.
We would be honored if you would join us.
Gang gremlins on the scene.
Grumps says hello everyone. Summer says at Grumps hey.
BLOSOM VXZ says hola early for once lol.
Gaga Grumps says so who's ready to play Wordle? Gaga Grumps says Blossom in the house.
We would be honored if you would join us.
Gaga Grumps says thanks for doing your daily heart, Blossom.
Good game. Good game. Good game. Good game. Good game.
Gaga Grumps says thanks for the GG's, Blossom. Gaga Grumps says let's play Wordle.
BLOSOM VXZ says you're welcome.
Gaga Grumps says what letter will the wheel choose? Predictions in the chat now.
Carl03 says Queen.
BL0SSOMVXZ says at Grumps. Gaga Grumps says Grumps on the nose.
Call our 3 says Queen.
Grumps says the start is a good one.
Gaga Grumps says we are starting with A. Q. Gaga Grumps says hey there Carla. Gaga Grumps says leaderboard reset incoming. Tap those screens. The one wearing the crown at the end of the song chooses the first word.
Like a thong, race to the top, like a thon. Tap and don't stop, like a thon. Who will be crowned like a thon? Gremlin renowned like a thon. Fingers on fire.
Gaga Grumps says want to steal the starting word. Send the ranking crown and snipe the list.
Hearts be flying like a thon. Gremlins defying.
Gaga Grumps says hi Sab didn't see you coming.
Lights the fire. Lights the fire. Lights the fire.
Below some VXZ says quack.
Gaga Grumps says your word starting with Q please Sab.
Blow some the XD says oh envy and thought I went low.
Gaga Grumps says lol. Gaga Grumps says quest you got.
BLO Some VXC says I'm gonna have to go at for 30 though, cause I have dance today just started lol.
Gaga Grumps says dance is fun though.
BL0SSOMBXZ says nutty.
Gaga Grumps says you lives at number 2, T in need of a home. Gaga Grumps says nutty fits and places our tea.
Thanks for the follow.
Gaga Grumps says T lives at number 1.
Blow some VXE says Turin.
BLO Some VXZ says at no S.
Gaga Grumps says thanks for following Marco. Gaga Grumps says hey there Chris.
Blow some BXC says Turin.
Gaga Grumps says tunic works.
Fireworks for Gaga.
Gaga Grumps says we're starting with fireworks.
It's a performance night. Explode 'em on her face. She's in a happy place. Fireworks.
Gaga Grumps says GG Gremlins. Let's see those W's in the chat.
Fireworks for Gaga. Emojis make her happy. As in her face they slappy. Fireworks for Gaga.
Good game.
Fireworks for Gaga. From a single rose
Good
to
game.
a whole bouquet. Anything will be okay. If you can, that's okay. Smileys in chat still win the day. Fireworks for Gaga. Fireworks for Gaga.
We would be
Fireworks for
honored
Gaga.
if you would join us.
Fireworks for Gaga.
Gaga Grumps
Thanks for
says
the
hi there
follow."
Gunday, thanks for doing your daily heart.
BLO Som VXE says Gond.
Gaga Grumps says thanks for following Piran. Gaga Grumps says if you haven't done it yet, grab your daily heart while I set up the next grid.
Som VX, she says it's my birthday on the 26th.
We would be honored
Gaga
if you
Grumps
would
says
join
let's play
us.
Wordle. Gaga Grumps says and mine 2 days later Blossom.
DLO Som VXC says that Gaga and Grumps IE.
Benjamin is in the house.
Gaga Grumps says flex in the house, thanks for doing your daily heart. Gaga Grumps says what letter will the wheel choose? Predictions in the chat now. Gaga Grumps says we are starting with A. T.
Ding, 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 ding. That's right.
Gaga Grumps says Chris on the nose. Gaga Grumps says leaderboard reset incoming. Tap those screens. The one wearing the crown at the end of the song chooses the first word.
Like a thong, race to the top, like a thon. Tap and don't stop, like a thon. Who will be crowned?
Gaga Grumps says want to steal the starting word. Send the ranking crown and snipe the list.
Fingers on fire, like a thon. Gremlins don't tire, like a thon. Hearts be flying, like a thon. Gremlins defying.
Gaga Grumps says I've given you the beat, now let's see your fingers dance.
Lights the fire, lights the fire, lights the fire.
Gaga Grumps says your word starting with T, please, Sab. Gaga Grumps says taste you got. Gaga Grumps says 10k taps. Nice finger work. Gaga Grumps says nice word Sab. Green A and S living at 2
We
and
would
3
be honored
needs a home.
if you would join us.
Wolsom VXC says based.
BLO Som VXD says at Gaga and Grumps.
Gaga Grumps says Crystal in the house with the heart me.
BLO Som VXC says 3 my Wi-Fi went out.
BL0 Some VXC says at Crystal hello.
Gaga Grumps says E lives at number 4.
BLO Som VXC says laser.
Crystal says at BL0SS VXC.
Gaga Grumps says Laserworks. Gaga Grumps says Lives at number 5.
Crystal says easel.
Blossom VXZ says Basel. BL Som VXZ says filler.
BL0SSOMVXZ says it's separating severe and Mio no.
Gaga Grumps says I think it's more likely to be easel.
Crystal says filler.
Gaga Grumps says easel then filler. Gaga Grumps says nasal is with an A.
BLO Some VXC says at Jake nitrogen monoxide.
Gaga Grumps says why do we need a filter? We're not stuck and we only have one option that I see.
BLO Som VXC says at Jake, 'cause IT ain't a word.
Gaga Grumps says easel is a word.
BLO Som VXC says that Jake nozzle isn't a word.
Gaga Grumps says it was easel.
BL Osam VXD says nasalias NT it works.
Grumps is on the buttons.
Gaga Grump says GG Gremlins. Let's see those W's in the chat.
BL Som VXC says that Jake Vissa is a troller.
Good game.
Gaga Grump says DVD for Gaga. Share the live chat for chat and shower her with roses and GGs. Jake says that BL0SN.VX says it's amazing.
Good game. Good game.
Gaga Grump says Isaac in the house.
Good game.
Gremlins, let's go!
Gaga Grump says you're Isaac. Gaga Grump says if you haven't done it yet, grab your daily heart while I set up the next grid.
Crystal says I don't see the www floating.
Gaga Grump says a corgi wiggled its butt at me. Gaga Grump says Crystal, we're testing not having the Tickfinity extras this week. Red TikTok doesn't push you if you have them, so the only thing is TTS and ranking. Gaga Grump says what letter will the wheel choose? Predictions in the chat now.
Crystal says okay.
Gaga Grump says we are starting with A. H. Gaga Grump says leaderboard reset incoming. Tap those screens. The one wearing the crown at the end of the song chooses the first word.
Race to the top like a thorn. Tap and don't stop like a thorn. Who will be crowned like a thorn? Gremlin renowned like a thorn. Fingers on fire like a thorn. Gremlins don't tire like a thorn. Hearts be flying like a thorn. Gremlins defying.
Gaga Grump says want to steal the starting word. Send the ranking crown and snipe the list. Gaga grumps says I've given you the beat, now let's see your fingers dance. Gaga grumps says your word starting with H, please, Isaac.
Isaac says house.
Benjamin is in the house.
Gaga grumps says house you got. Gaga grumps says nearly. A yellow E in need of a home. Isaac says thought that was a wipeout, lol. Gaga grumps says me too.
Isaac says dread.
Gaga grumps says dread fits. Gaga grumps says D lives at number 5, R and E are homeless.
Isaac says maybe it ends. Red.
Gaga grumps says that's what I would go for too. Gaga grumps says fired is in the grid. Will it set off fireworks? Gaga grumps says well it's not a red word.
Isaac says tired.
Gaga grumps says F has been eliminated now, Aaron.
Isaac says sorry, can't be tired.
Gaga grumps says it can't be fried. No F.
Crystal says he's reigned a word.
Gaga grumps says I don't think so. Gaga grumps says, but I have put in a pattern that gives a word. Isaac says, weird. Gaga grumps says, exactly, Isaac. Gaga grumps says, moves all our yellows and fits.
Good game.
Gaga grumps says, weird for Wordle in 4.
Good game. Good game. Good game. Good game. Good game.
Gaga grumps says, GG Gremlins.
Good game.
Let's see those W's in the chat.
Good game.
Chosen by fate, play a part, it's a live date. Wordle with Gaga. Wordle with Gaga.
Gaga grumps says, do you do the daily Wordle? I post mine on my page and would love you to share your results.
Isaac says, I don't have any coins for a daily heart, sorry.
Gaga grumps says, if you haven't done it yet, grab your daily heart while I set up the next grid.
Only in 3, a pretty sky.
Gaga grumps says, there will be a treasure box up after next game for daily hearts.
Isaac says all.
Gaga grumps says, and never apologize for not gifting in here. Gaga grumps says it's appreciated but not obligated.
Good game. Good game. Good game. Good game. Good game. Good game.
Gaga grumps says, let's play Wordle. Gaga grumps says, what letter will the wheel choose? Predictions in the chat now. Gaga grumps says, we are starting with A. R. Gaga grumps says, leaderboard reset incoming. Tap those screens. The one wearing the crown at the end of the song chooses the first word.
Like a thong, race to the top, like a thon. Tap and don't stop, like a thon. Who will
Gaga grumps says, want to steal the starting word. Send the ranking crown and snipe the list. Gaga grumps says, I've given you the beat, now let's see your fingers dance.
Lights the fire.
Gaga grumps, says Isaac with the last-second snipe on the list. Gaga grumps, says your word starting with R, please, Isaac. Isaac says ready. Gaga grumps, says ready you got. Gaga grumps, says got it this time. Gaga grumps, says wipeouts in the chat. Isaac says no. Gaga grumps, says second time lucky.
Crystal says flung.
Gaga grumps, says flung fits. Gaga grumps, says it's a double. Gaga grumps, says wipeouts in the chat. Gaga grumps, says Chris comes in for the triple lol. Gaga grumps, says one day we'll get one. Gaga grumps, says but not this day. Gaga grumps, says 4 yellows, a partial anagram.
Summer says I'm so confused he can't think of anything.
Crystal says sight.
Crystal says NM.
Crystal says T not last.
Gaga grumps, says oh nice one Crystal. Gaga grumps, says bar humbug. Gaga Grumps says I put in a pattern and it made a word lol.
Summer says ong.
Gaga Grumps says I didn't do it on purpose.
Welcome, Gremlins, to the
Gaga
game
Grumps says
grotto.
GG Gremlins. Let's see those W's
To the
in the
game
chat.
grotto. Welcome in, guys. Settle down. Grab your heartbeat.
Good game.
Share us round. Now tap that screen. Tap it, tap it. Tap that screen. Yeah, tap it, tap it. It's your warm-up routine. Game Gremlins on the scene.
Gaga Grumps says welcome Gremlins to the game grotto. Take a seat, grab your daily heart, claim your points and prepare to play.
Game Gremlins on the scene.
Crystal says host.
Now tap that screen. Tap it, tap it. Tap that screen. Yeah, tap it, tap it. Game Gremlins, come and let's go. Now tap that screen. Tap it, tap it. Tap that screen.
Gaga
Yeah,
Grumps
tap it,
says
tap
treasure
it.
box up
Let's
if you need a
see
coin
those
for your
team
daily
speakers
heart.
Game Gremlins on the scene. Now tap
Gaga
that
Grumps
screen.
says if you haven't done it yet, grab your daily heart while I set up the next group.
Now tap that screen.
Good game. Good game.
Now tap that screen.
Good game. Good game. Good game.
Game Gremlins on the scene.
Gaga Grumps says let's play Wordle. Gaga Grumps says creative in the house. Gaga Grumps says what letter will the wheel choose? Predictions in the chat now. Gaga Grumps says we are starting with A. N. Gaga Grumps says leaderboard reset incoming. Tap those screens. The one wearing the crown at the end of the song chooses the first word.
Like a thong, race to the top, like a thon. Tap and don't stop, like a thon. Who will be crowned?
Gaga Grumps says want to steal the starting word. Send the ranking crown and snipe the list.
Fingers on fire, like a thon. Gremlins don't tire, like a thon. Hearts beat flying, like a thon. Gremlins defying.
Gaga Grumps says I've given you the beat, now let's see your fingers dance.
Grumps says treasure box is open.
Gaga Grumps says 'Treasure box is open'. Let's see those W's in the chat.
Grumps says treasure box is open. 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 Grum
Gaga Grumps says your word starting with N please Isaac.
Isaac says I'll let someone else pick first word this time.
Gaga Grumps says Chris, do you have an I word? Gaga Grumps says hi there VSS nickel is 6 letters. Gaga Grumps says night you got. Gaga Grumps says a yellow N in need of a home. Oscar says plain.
Isaac says snake.
Gaga Grumps says hi there K welcome. Gaga Grumps says plain fits.
We would be honored if you would join us.
Crystal says at Becoy_hi there.
Gaga Grumps says we added a homeless P.
Isaac says Sproon.
Gaga Grumps says 19J in the house with the heart me.
One 9Jews97 says spoon.
Gaga Grumps says what is sprun? Gaga Grumps says spoon works. Gaga Grumps says haha.
19Jews97 says snoo.
Gaga Grumps says I wonder what this could be. Gaga Grumps says almost seems redundant to spin it.
Crystal says robbed.
Gaga Grumps says GG Gremlins. Let's see those W's in the chat.
It's playtime! Gaga is in the box! Don't let her lose! Grumps is on the buttons! Don't let him push yours! Are you ready to play? Let those stickers fly! Which team are you on?
Gaga Grumps says Dooba Gaga. Share the live chat the chat and shower her with roses and GGs.
Good game.
Gremlins, let's go! Gremlins, let's go! Team Gaga, Team Gaga, give a cheer. Team Grumps, are you here? Team Gaga, are you ready? Team Grumps, are you steady? Game. Gremlins, let's go!
Gaga Grumps says if you haven't done it yet, grab your daily heart while I set up the next clip.
Gremlins, let's go! Game! Gremlins, let's go!
Good game.
Game!
Good game.
Let's go!
Good game. Good game. Good game. Good game. Good game.
Gaga Grumps says let's play Wordle. Gaga Grumps says what letter will the wheel choose? Predictions in the chat now. Gaga Grumps says we are starting with A.
Isaac says ingot.
Gaga Grumps says leaderboard reset incoming. Tap those screens. The one wearing the crown at the end of the song chooses the first word.
Isaac says, sorry, accidentally pressed send for ingot. I was getting it ready for if I won race.
Gaga Grumps says want to steal the starting word. Send the ranking crown and snipe the list. Gaga Grumps says suggestions always welcome. Even if you don't win, you may help win.
Everybody get down! It's a freaking sniper! Ha ha!
Gaga Grumps says the grumpy one stole the crown. Gaga Grumps says your word starting with I please Grumps.
Grumps says irate.
Gaga Grumps says lol apt. Gaga Grumps says irate you got.
Thanks for the follow!
Gaga Grumps says alives at number 3 and E at 5.
Isaac says shape.
We would be honored if you would join us.
Gaga Grumps says thanks for following Ernestina.
Precious says Happy Monday.
Gaga Grumps says Precious in the house with the heart me.
Isaac says shape.
Gaga Grumps says shape fits. Gaga Grumps says no change. Gaga Grumps says blame still works. No need to spam Darcy.
What creative one says Blaze?
Gaga Grumps says thought Darcy had it then.
Precious says Blade Blaze.
Thanks for the follow.
Gaga Grumps says okay poll coming up.
Well, creative one says Dizzy as filler.
Precious says no need for filler, only 2 options.
Isaac says don't need a filler, I don't think.
Gaga Grumps says exactly. Gaga Grumps says vote for your word in the poll. Isaac says Blaze.
What creative one says at 11 I didn't copy, that's what I was thinking.
Precious says, guys, positive vibes here only. Please don't spam when we are doing a poll.
Gaga Grumps says Blade won the vote. Gaga Grumps says all of those saying Blade, why didn't you vote?
Precious says they were wrong anyway.
Gaga Grumps says yes, but you didn't vote in the poll. Gaga Grumps says only 3 voted.
Isaac says, where do you find pole?
Gaga Grumps says check out the all-green grid. Gaga Grumps says GG Gremlins. Let's see those W's in the chat.
Oh Creative 1 says yes, I didn't see it.
Wordle with Gaga. Wordle with Gaga. Will the fireworks fly?
Good game.
A random star chosen by fate. Play a part, it's a live date. Wordle with Gaga. Wordle with Gaga.
Good game.
Gaga Grumps says I shall have to ask Grumps. I don't see the same as you in studio.
Good game. Good game. Good game.
Gaga Grumps says do you do the daily Wordle? I post mine on my page and would love you to share your results.
A pretty sky.
Gaga Grumps says he didn't see it either.
But Creative One says I was looking for the smile, the crying face.
Gaga Grumps says if you haven't done it yet, grab your daily heart while I set up the next grid. Gaga Grumps says I made it a word
We would
pairing
be
set.
honored if you would join us.
Oh Creative 1 says oh okay.
Gaga Grumps says for those who did vote, where was it?
Sarah Notsaron says at Gaga and Grumps top left under your picture.
Precious says at Sarah Notsaron welcome to the team.
Gaga Grumps says cheers Seren, and welcome. Gaga Grumps says thanks for doing your daily heart Seren. Gaga Grumps says let's play Wordle. Gaga Grumps says what letter will the wheel choose? Predictions in the chat now. Gaga Grumps says we are starting with A, C. Gaga Grumps says leaderboard reset incoming. Tap those screens. The one wearing the crown at the end of the song chooses the first word.
Like a thong, race to the top, like a thon. Tap and don't stop, like a thon. Who will be crowned like a thon? Gremlin renowned, like a thon. Fingers on fire.
Gaga Grumps says want to steal the starting word. Send the ranking crown and snipe the list. Gaga Grumps says Rai in the house didn't see you coming, sorry. Gaga Grumps says your word starting with C please Isaac.
Isaac says clone.
Gaga Grumps says clone you got.
Sunshine Katie says lunch.
Gaga Grumps says I keep waiting for my emojis when I disable them lol. Gaga Grumps says Katie in the house.
Will Creative One says Limby.
Gaga Grumps says no C for lunch. Isaac says plain.
Isaac says NVM.
Gaga Grumps says needs an N creative.
Sunshine Katie says lumpy.
Rory says until.
Sunshine Katie says Luna.
Gaga Grumps says Luna fits. Gaga Grumps says N lives at number 3L still homeless. Gaga Grumps says I and Y only vowels. Gaga Grumps says hey there Natalie welcome.
Precious says vinyl.
Isaac says Y is a vowel.
Sarah Notzerin says vinyl.
Gaga Grumps says no technically, but it acts as a vowel in non-vowel words.
Isaac says Owaller.
Gaga Grumps says vinyl is a good shout. Gaga Grumps says it is a pseudo-vowel lol. Raya Rai says that was my guess.
Precious says woohoo.
Gaga Grumps says you know what time it is.
It's a performance in
Sunshine Katie says WD. Gaga Grumps says GG Gremlins. Let's see those W's in the chat.
Sarah Knotson says, oh, I love this line.
Good game.
Fireworks for
Good
Gaga.
game. Good game.
Precious says at Sarah Knotson, you can use the emotes now you have a heart me.
Gaga Grumps says thanks Sarah. Gaga Grumps says if you haven't done it yet, grab your daily heart while I set up the next grid. Gaga Grumps says let's play Wordle. Gaga Grumps says what letter will the wheel choose? Predictions in the chat now. Gaga Grumps says we are starting with A. E.
Precious says it when I want Z, it never appears.
Gaga Grumps says Isaac on the nose. Gaga Grumps says leaderboard reset incoming. Tap those screens. The one wearing the crown at the end of the song chooses the first word.
Like a thong, race to the top, like a thon. Tap and don't stop, like a thon. Who will be crowned like a thon? Gremlin renowned, like a thon.
Gaga Grumps says want to steal the starting word. Send the ranking crown and snipe the list. Gaga Grumps says I've given you the beat, now let's see your fingers dance.
Good game.
Gaga Grumps says your word starting with E, please Rai Rai.
Rari says Earth.
Gaga Grumps says thanks for the GG's precious.
Precious says at Gaga and Grumps.
Rory says Earth.
Gaga Grumps says I'm sorry Miller, sometimes likes get throttled or lost or something. Grumps has been complaining for days that his aren't getting counted F. Gaga Grumps says Earth you got.
Precious says mine never count, it's fine though.
Gaga Grumps says we aren't playing today's Wordle.
Isaac says spent.
Gaga Grumps says Yellow ET wants to go home.
Nope.
Gaga Grumps says spent fits. Gaga Grumps says T lives at number 5E still homeless.
Isaac says could still be Comet.
Precious says comet.
Rory says legit.
Gaga Grumps says indeed Comet still works.
Sunshine Katie says inlet.
Precious says octet.
Isaac says SOSIT.
Sunshine Katie says omelette.
Rory says octet.
Gaga Grumps says well E lives at number 40 and C need homes. We have a partial anagram.
Isaac says I'm going to go at Gaga and Grumps.
Gaga Grumps says octet is in the grid. Gaga Grumps says okay Isaac, see you soon. Gaga Grumps says thanks you for coming.
Isaac says see you Tomarai.
Gaga Grumps says you certainly shall.
Welcome, Gremlin, to the game grotto.
Gaga Grumps says GG Gremlins. Let's see those W's in the chat.
Welcome in, guys. Settle down. Grab your heartbeat. Share us round. Now tap that screen. Tap it, tap it. Tap that screen. Yeah, tap it. It's your warm-up routine. Game Gremlins on the scene.
Gaga Grumps says welcome Gremlins to the game grotto. Take a seat, grab your daily heart, claim your points and prepare to play.
Now tap that screen. Tap it, tap that screen. Yeah, tap it. Game Gremlins, come and let's go. Now tap that screen.
Gaga Grumps says treasure box up if you need a coin for your daily heart.
Let's see those team stickers flow. Game Gremlins on the scene. Now tap that screen.
Gaga Grumps says if you haven't done it yet, grab your daily heart while I set up the next grid.
Now tap that screen.
Gaga Grumps says thanks for following me.
Now tap that screen. Game Gremlins on the scene.
Gaga Grumps says let's play Wordle. Gaga Grumps says what letter will the wheel choose? Predictions in the chat now. Gaga Grumps says we are starting with A. I again.
Ding, 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 ding. That's right, nigga.
Gaga Grumps says Katie on the nose. Gaga Grumps says leaderboard reset incoming. Tap those screens. The one wearing the crown at the end of the song chooses the first word.
Like a thong, race to the top, like a thon, tap and don't stop, like a thon.
Gaga Grumps says want to steal the starting word. Send the ranking crown and snipe the list. Gaga Grumps says I've given you the beat, now let's see your fingers dance.
We would be honored if you would join us.
Gaga Grumps says your word starting with I, please, Rai. Gaga Grumps says thanks for doing your daily heart, Miller.
Rory says irate.
Gaga Grumps says ha. Gaga Grumps says irate you got.
Well, creative one says second one today.
Gaga Grumps says Grumps will be pleased.
Summer says troll.
Milargaming says troll.
Gaga Grumps says R lives at number 2 Wordle Street. T needs a home.
Rory says front.
Gaga Grumps says troll fits.
Sunshine Katie says trunk.
Summer says truly.
Gaga Grumps says T moved into number 1 and L into 4.
Precious says truly.
Rory says truly.
Gaga Grumps says truly is a good shout.
Sunshine Katie says troll.
Gaga Grumps says wait for it.
Fireworks for Gaga.
Gaga Grumps says Wordle in 3. Let's see those fireworks. Gifts and emojis will explode on Gaga's face.
Emojis make her happy, as in her face they slappy. Fireworks for Gaga, fireworks for Gaga. From a single rose to a whole bouquet, anything will be okay.
Gaga Grumps says GG Gremlins. Let's see those W's in the chat.
Fireworks for Gaga. Fireworks for Gaga. Fireworks for Gaga. Fireworks for Gaga.
Gaga Grumps says if you haven't done it yet, grab your daily heart while I set up the next grid. Gaga Grumps says let's play Wordle. Gaga Grumps says what letter will the wheel choose? Predictions in the chat now. Gaga Grumps says we are starting with A, W. Gaga Grumps says leaderboard reset incoming. Tap those screens. The one wearing the crown at the end of the song chooses the first word.
Like-a-thon, race to the top, like-a-thon, tap and don't stop, like-a-thon, who will be crowned, like-a-thon.
Gaga Grumps says want to steal the starting word. Send the ranking crown and snipe the list. Gaga Grumps says thanks for the Ramadan moon and heart puff crystal. Gaga Grumps says your word starting with W please Rai.
Rare says wager.
Gaga Grumps says hi there Yoris. Gaga Grumps says wager you got. Gaga Grumps says a yellow E in need of a home. Gaga Grumps says hi there Josky.
Malargaming says bloke.
Rory says bloke.
Creative One says enjoy.
Gaga grumps says bloke fits. Gaga grumps says hey there Isla. Gaga grumps says no change. 8 letters out of the game. Sunshine Katie says Teddy. Gaga grumps says leg it doesn't fit no G no L.
Malargaming says edits.
Crystal says good day. Gaga and grump work I go.
Gaga grumps says no plurals in Wordle.
Rory says piety.
Gaga grumps says thanks for coming Crystal, have a good day.
Sunshine Katie says visit.
Creative One says empty.
Gaga grumps says medic works.
Sunshine Katie says vixen.
Gaga grumps says wow.
The Creative One says no I.
Gaga grumps says spend still works.
Precious says quest.
Rory says event.
Gaga grumps says GMTA Chris lol.
Precious says event.
Rory says try event. Or Creative One says event.
Gaga grumps says event, it's going to be, isn't it?
Malargaming says I think event too. Rory says yes.
Gaga grumps says GG gremlins. Let's see those W's in the chat.
Gaga is in the box. Don't let her lose.
Sunshine Katie says event.
Don't let him push yours. Are you ready to play? Let those stickers fly.
Gaga grumps says do the do for Gaga. Share the live chat, and shower her with roses and GGs. Gaga grumps says if you haven't done it yet, grab your daily heart while I set up the next grid.
Oh Creative One says at Joyous you have to snipe or get those fingers tapping lol if you want your word.
Gaga grumps says hey yours, we have a format for first word. Wheel picks the letter like race winner or sniper, gets the word. Gaga grumps says if you haven't done it yet, grab your daily heart while I set up the next grid. Gaga Grumps says let's play Wordle. Gaga Grumps says what letter will the wheel choose? Predictions in the chat now. Gaga Grumps says we are starting with A, D. Gaga Grumps says leaderboard reset incoming. Tap those screens. The one wearing the crown at the end of the song chooses the first word.
Race to the top like a thon. Tap and don't stop like a thon.
Gaga Grumps says want to steal the starting word. Send the ranking crown and snipe the list. Gaga Grumps says I've given you the beat, now let's see your fingers dance. Gaga Grumps says 70k taps and counting, awesome work. Gaga Grumps says your word starting with D please, Chris. Gaga Grumps says you will be dealt with.
Well, Creative One says dealt.
Gaga Grumps says E and Alive at 2 and 3D needs a home.
Millargaming says beard.
Rere says ready.
Gaga Grumps says beard fits. Miller Gaming says definitely ready then.
Oscar says ready.
Precious as ready it is.
Gaga Grumps says and of course it's ready.
Rore says try ready.
Well, Creative One says ready.
Gaga Grumps says at least you still get fireworks, Rai.
Rare says may have got it in too.
Millargaming says bingo.
Fireworks for Gaga.
Gaga Grumps says fireworks for Rai.
Explode 'em on her face, she's in a happy place. Fireworks for Gaga.
Exan Bacon says Gaga and Grumps says eggs is in the house.
Fireworks for Gaga. Emojis make her happy.
Gaga Grumps says GG Gremlins. Let's see those W's in the chat.
Fireworks for Gaga. From a single rose to a whole bouquet. Anything will be okay. If you can, that's okay. Smiley
Gaga grumps says eggs is in the house. Gaga grumps says if you haven't done it yet, grab your daily heart while I set up the next grid. Gaga grumps says let's play Wordle. Gaga grumps says what letter will the wheel choose? Predictions in the chat now.
Or Creative One says that's Sophia. For a moment I thought you meant the game. Lol.
Gaga grumps says we are starting with A. I again.
Milargaming says I again.
Gaga grumps says what is it third time today? Gaga grumps says lol me too. Gaga grumps says leaderboard reset incoming. Tap those screens. The one wearing the crown at the end of the song chooses the first word.
Like-a-thon, race to the top, like-a-thon, tap and don't stop, like-a-thon, who will be crowned, like-a-thon, gremlin renowned, like-a-thon, fingers on fire, like-a-thon, gremlins don't
Gaga grumps says we have a format for starting is all Sophia, you're still more than welcome. Gaga grumps says want to steal the starting word? Send the ranking crown and snipe the list. Gaga grumps says I've given you the beat, now let's see your fingers dance. Gaga grumps says she's back on top, your word starting with I please Rai Rai.
Rare says enter.
Gaga grumps says into you got. Gaga grumps says nearly. A yellow E in need of a home. Gaga grumps says messy fits.
Rare says cuz.
Gaga Grumps says we added a homeless S.
Milargaming says sweep.
Gaga Grumps says cause works.
Malargaming says sweep.
Gaga Grumps says no change. 10 letters out of the game. Gaga Grumps says sweep still fits.
The creative one says sneak.
Milargaming says no wait.
Precious says shell spell swell.
Milargaming says can't be sweep.
Serenote Seren says swell. Gaga Grumps says thought I denied you fireworks, then Miller lol.
Precious says swell.
Well, creative one says SWWLL.
Rory says swell.
Malargaming says swell.
Gaga Grumps says damn missed the wrong place D.
Milargaming says it, Gaga and Grumps, I know ha.
Or creative one says at Gaga, and Grumps it's okay, it's not over, yet.
Gaga Grumps says I only see swell. Last minute options before we commit.
Well, creative one says swelt.
Gaga Grumps says can't be plural Sophia. Precious says use the stop emote if you see a mistake. Gaga Grumps says yeah, throw those peanuts at me.
Rory says sorry Gaga and delayed.
Gaga Grumps says GG Gremlins. Let's see those W's in the chat.
It's playtime! Gaga is in the box! Don't let her lose! Grumps is on the buttons!
Gaga Grumps says do for Gaga. Share the live chat to chat and shower her with roses and GGs.
Which team are you on? Team Gaga, give a cheer. Team Grumps, are you here? Team Gaga, are you ready? Team Grumps, are you steady? Game Gremlins, let's go! Game Gremlins, let's go! Team Gaga, Team Gaga, give a cheer. Team Grumps, are you here? Team Gaga, are you ready? Team Grumps, are you steady? Game Gremlins, let's go! Game Gremlins, let's go! Game Gremlins, let's go!
Gaga Grumps says I think this will probably be the last grid of the day unless we finish it really quickly or something more. Gaga Grumps says if you haven't done it yet, grab your daily heart while I set up the next word.
A creative one says, Gramps, I can't see what you're posting.
Gaga Grumps says he's posting W and GG stickers. Gaga Grumps says let's play Wordle. Gaga Grumps says what letter will the wheel choose? Predictions in the chat now. Gaga Grumps says we are starting with A. Why? Gaga Grumps says leaderboard reset incoming. Tap those screens. The one wearing the crown at the end of the song chooses the first word.
Like a thong, race to the top, like a thon, tap and don't stop, like a thon. Who will be
Gaga Grumps says want to steal the starting word. Send the ranking crown and snipe the list.
fingers on fire, like a thon. Gremlins don't tire, like a thon. Hearts beat flying, like a thon. Gremlins defying.
Gaga Grumps says I've given you the beat, now let's see your fingers dance.
Or creative one says yeast.
Serenotzerin says ears.
Gaga Grumps says years you got. I don't curate the first word. But there are no plurals in Wordle, so if you use one you give up the chance of a lucky Wordle in one.
Serenatsaran says at Gaga, and Grumps, oh okay, I understand.
Gaga grumps says a yellow E and R in need of a home.
Rare says bride.
Serenatsaran says pride.
Gaga grumps says I don't accept plurals for the rest apart from when we're stuck, filtering.
Serenatsaran says at Sophia, no Y or A.
LL Creative 1 says pride. Serenode Seren says cried. Gaga grumps says bride fits. Gaga grumps says we added a yellow eye.
Rare says wiper.
Gaga grumps says thanks for following Idelia. Gaga grumps says ripen works. Precious says infer.
Precious says enter.
Gaga grumps says we have a partial anagram and maybe an trap.
Serenatsaran says enter.
O Creative 1 says enter.
Rare says nicer.
Precious says infer or inter.
Gaga grumps says or not. Inter looks like a good shout.
Jake says inner.
Serenatsaran says that Rare is homeless.
Rare says inner.
Gaga grumps says I can't go in second.
Well, Creative 1 says filler.
Jake says inner.
Or Creative 1 says inner infer.
Gaga grumps says infer. Inter. Anything else?
Precious says infer inner.
Precious says nothing else.
Gaga grumps says okay, 2 options, 2 guesses, no filter needed.
Rare says knife filler.
O Creative 1 says fried for filler.
Gaga grumps says no filter needed for 2 options, 2 guesses. Gaga Grumps says GG Gremlins. Let's see those W's in the chat.
Book Creative One says one more for the road. Go.
Gaga Grumps says thanks for joining me to play Wordle. I will be back at 4 p.m. UK tomorrow for more Wordle with Gaga. Gaga Grumps says I can't stay. Neither we, I'm afraid.
Wordle with Gaga. Wordle with Gaga.
Gaga Grumps says, do you do the daily Wordle? I post mine on my page and would love you to share your results.
A random star chosen by
Creative One says bye.
it's a live day.